Right, after that false start, good afternoon everyone. Welcome to the Children and Families Decision Meeting. If we just go around, I'm Councillor Rob Wood, the Cabinet Member for Children and Families.
Judith Smythe, Councillor for St Jude's Ward.
Maria Smith, Group Accountant for Children, Families and Education.
Bev Pennicott, Finance Manager for Children, Families and Education.
I'm David Penrose, Democratic Services.
Okay, just a few housekeeping safety information. If the continuous fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the room and public gallery by the stairwells. Do not attempt to use the lifts. Please assemble at Queen Victoria's statue in front of the civic offices. In order to comply with the Guildhall Trust Fire Marshal regulations, please remember to sign out when you leave the building after today's meeting. Did we sign in? Okay, live web streaming. May I draw everyone's attention to the fact that this meeting will be filmed from a camera at a fixed location at the back of the meeting room, and the recording will be on the Council's website, hopefully. Members of the public are also permitted to record the meeting on the understanding that it neither disrupts the meeting nor records those stating explicitly that they do not wish to be recorded. May I ask everyone to use the microphones provided when they are speaking. I'll now ask members and officials to introduce themselves. Everybody else has so far. Alison, do you want to officially introduce yourself?
I'm so sorry, Chair, to be late. Alison Jeffrey, Director Children, Families and Education.
Have we got any apologies?
None.
Okay. Declarations of interest. Can I do my usual? I'm a governor with ARC Charter and the primaries. My daughter's CEO of Motivate. My son-in-law works for Harbour Schools. And I think that is it. Any other declarations of interest?
None from me, Chair.
Okay then, let's go straight into the Children and Families Budget Monitoring Report for the third quarter. Over to you, Beverly.
Thank you, Chair. This is a report for noting, and it sets out the financial position for Children and Families portfolio as at the end of December 2018. The table at paragraph 5.1 sets out the summary position for the portfolio, and it shows an overall projected overspend of just under £7 million. The social care and safeguarding remains the key pressure area, although that's been offset slightly by a projected saving on early help, which is mainly due to vacant posts. The troubled families is shown there as well. That's entirely grant funded, so we expect the expenditure to match the income, but we're expecting both of those to be in the region of £688,000 this year. Details of the safeguarding budget are set out in paragraphs 5.5 to 5.7, but as always, the main area of overspend relates to looked after children, with an estimated total overspend of £6.4 million. As the number of children in care continues to grow, along with the average cost of placements for those children. Within that 6.4, the direct placement costs account for just over £5 million of that overspend, and that includes £3 million on external residential placements, £500,000 on independent fostering agencies, and £1 million on in-house carers. Now, the in-house carers, whilst it's £1 million overspent, is actually a good news story, because that is our best value type of placement, if you like. So the fact that we've got more children in in-house placements is a good news story. There's details of each of the types of placements and average costs, etc., at the table at 5.7.2. Other pressures on the budget, the cost of supporting unaccompanied minors places a huge strain, and we're currently projecting an overspend of £805,000 there. Work is ongoing to try to persuade other local authorities to take responsibility for some of those children who come in via our port, but even so, our numbers have increased from 69 to 92 over the last year. There's also an increasing pressure on the care leavers budget as our unaccompanied minors reach 18 and they're no longer eligible for the UM grant, although they do get a UM Care Leaver grant, but it's not as much money as the UM grant. Overall, I mean, that's the direct costs of supporting UMs. Overall, the indirect costs, which are within other areas, could be in the region of around about £1 million, we estimate. Other pressure areas in the budget include an increasing need for secure placements. We had 2 active at the end of December, and that's projecting an overspend of £384,000. We have a projected shortfall in adoption income of £104,000. We have used agency social workers to cover maternity and other vacancies, and that's creating a pressure of £163,000. Our cost of supporting children with disabilities is again an increasing pressure, currently projected at £239,000 overspent, and we have a range of other staffing pressures which have come to £224,000. So a whole lot of pressures there. On the capital side, we've got 4 schemes within the approved programme, and they're set out at paragraph 6.1. The schemes are adaptations to foster care properties. That relates to grants which we can give to foster carers to help deliver foster care placements within their homes. Each individual proposal within that budget will be subject to its own financial appraisal and approval process. We have the software replacement programme, which is in progress. We currently expect the new system to go live in October. And the last 2 are works at Tangiers Road and Beachside to improve the facilities there. They're both now largely complete, although we think that there's a possible overspend at Tangiers, which is mainly due to environmental delays, bats, I believe. And if there's an overspend there, that will be met in the first instance from the Staying Close grant funding. So to conclude, whilst the projected revenue overspend is significant, we're not considered to be a high spending authority, which I think is a key point. And this is an independent view borne out by a range of benchmarking measures, as well as independent work carried out by the LGA and People 2 most recently. The projected overspend of £7 million has been fully provided for in the Council budget for 2018-19, and that was approved on the 12th of February. Based on the profile of children in care at the end of December, we calculated there was an underlying budget deficit of £5.1 million. That was, of course, a point in time, and that included £800,000 in respect of unaccompanied minors. The Council has provided an additional £4 million into the Children's Safeguarding budget for 2019-20, which, together with the financial sustainability strategy being developed by the service in conjunction with People 2, is expected to be able to accommodate the pressures next year.
Thank you for that report. Very comprehensive, and as I've said before, I'm very pleased that we've also broken down some of these costs to give us a sort of indicative cost per placement, etc., so we can see where the money's been spent. And as a result of that, with us knowing that we, like other authorities, are under quite a lot of pressure for children's services, so this is not unusual, the ability for us to, first of all, benchmark that against other authorities where we turned out to be one of the best in terms of value for money and the spend we're putting into it. That obviously led to the fact that we have to realign ongoing the budget, which is where the 4 million this year and 3 million ongoing is going in, and also with the work that's going to go underway in terms of addressing the other areas, particularly the UAMs. One of the areas we're still looking at is for the other authorities, and I know several other authorities have now helped us out there. And also, we've also raised this within Parliament. Recently, there were questions asked in the House of Lords about UAMs and what the government is going to be doing about making sure we do, local authorities get some help towards the actual underlying costs and that. So I'm happy that the projected outturn for the year of 5.1 is also, to some extent, going to be covered partly by the 4 million that we're putting in, and hopefully work on the remaining 1 million with the UAMs will bring us actually back into balance. So the 5.1 million, the question I'm going to ask is, you said in time, and we can't deny that the projection is upwards because otherwise we've not peaked. So what does that look like today?
Our numbers of looked after children haven't changed significantly since the end of December. That said, I can't, with my hand on my heart, tell you what the profile looks like, because obviously it depended on the profile of the children at that time, which might be different to the profile of the children now. But overall, the numbers haven't changed a lot since the end of December.
So would I be, if with the projected 4 million being put in to the current account, etc., and with the underlying 5.1 million, does that mean we are in fact looking to make up about 1 million from various initiatives, etc.?
That's based on that analysis of the profile at the end of December. Yes, we'd be looking at around about 1 million to try to make up next year, with the variety of strategies that are currently in progress.
I'm asking that because obviously within the service working very hard, I don't want to set a figure that is totally unrealistic and is much more achievable to give people a target that they can actually look at. Okay, thank you. Question.
Are you saying that by the end of the financial year then, taking into account the 12th of February Cabinet budget decisions, we'll be 1 million adrift?
I don't think I can answer that in all honesty. If nothing changed from that point at the end of December, we would be about £1 million adrift. What we don't know, of course, is what the profile of our children will look like, and the impact of the strategies underway to try to get children home more quickly and to stop them coming in.
And the budget that we're setting for the service for next year, will that show 1 million saving, therefore, to counteract that? Approximately.
Well, the budget will reflect the funding that we've got, and we're working now to apply the budget across our spend areas in the most appropriate way, but we will project each time, as we do now, based on the number of children that we've got in at any one. So at the end of each month, we look at the profile of the children that we've got, and we project that on either until we know they're going, we have a leaving date, or until the end of the year. What we can't necessarily do is project for the impact of the strategies, because we don't.
I'm not seeking to hold you to it, I'm just making sure that I understand the situation in overall terms.
So in overall terms, I would expect that our day one pressure would be around about £1 million.
And that you'll set a budget that eliminates that during the year, or that you won't?
The budget is how much money we've got. So we will set the budget that we've got, and we will aim to get as close to it as we can.
Okay. Is that why, I mean, that's because my second question, Chair, is paragraph 2, the summary. I wasn't here this time last year, obviously, but did you set the budget for the current year in the same way last year? How did that work? And I mean, look, from reading this anew, it seems that the budget was set but rather too low last time.
Can I answer that? The previous administration set the budget, which we've inherited. So I think in hindsight and on review this year, with the pressures going in, there's no denying. And to be fair, in previous years it's been the same. It's just got bigger at this particular one. So this is partly to address the underlying budget that it's never been fully catered for. In other words, doing the individual costs and working out the individual costs and just multiplying by the number of children we've got tells you you've under budgeted. So I guess this year's figure for the budget was not on our watch, but we've addressed the underlying issue so far.
Thank you.
If I can just comment, it might be useful actually to share with you the detailed analysis that People 2 have done, the external consultants who've been hired to look at the City Council strategy, and also projecting forward, looking at the impact of funding streams which are ending, the Troubled Families Programme in 2020, the use of the Public Health Reserve that runs out around the same time. So you can see how actually if we are required to replace some of that funding, it will take us more than 12 months to get to a balanced position. So I wouldn't hold out hope that we will get to the end of 1920 and find that we're in balance.
It would be really useful to see that, actually, just to get an idea of what's being lost, particularly. And also, kind of before, perhaps at the next meeting or whenever's convenient, when you're doing it anyway, how, that in conjunction with how you're going to either replace the work or the work you're going to drop as a result of that, or the forward plan, really.
Well, I should say the key aim of the sustainability strategy that we have is to reduce the number of looked after children in the city, together with work on the care offer to make it more flexible and reduce the average unit cost. So those two things, the number and the unit cost. And in terms of the reducing the number, what we want to do is maintain our targeted early help services, which Ofsted looked at in September and found to be effective, but also to develop our safeguarding services into more of a whole family model with much deeper involvement of adult services following the path that's been trailed by Hertfordshire and Leeds and others, in order to get our number of looked after children down to the average of our statistical neighbours, which is about 628, compared to our 600 and, as of today, is around just short of 680. So, that's a challenge for us. There's no question about it, and it's not going to be achieved in 12 months.
And just to reiterate, I'm comfortable with the fact that although there may be an odd penny or two to find there in terms of efficiencies per run, we are actually at the best end in terms of value for money. So there is no money to be found. That what we need to look at is what's in the pipeline and why it's in the pipeline, the number of children, and work backwards in the pipeline, which is invest in the early years area, because that is the key thing. And also to make sure people in the pipeline who are in care with the city do get out and are repatriated with parents, or carers or foster carers, because that then shortens their stint within them. So that's what we're about to concentrate on. But in doing that, the important thing was to address the fact that the budget was unrealistic and really needed to reflect the position we were in.
Thank you, Chair. As you know, all my experience tells me that that's the right thing to do anyway. But like you, I suspect, Chair, I very much like the table on under 5.7.2. It really shows us that we need to reduce the external use of external residential. I understand that this table doesn't include a cost for our in-house residential, because we cost that in a different way. I do think it would be useful for comparison, and with a heavily underscored note to this, if we had a notional cost, if say they were 90% full, what would the cost be, so that we can use that as a notional figure to compare with these. I fully appreciate that they're not always that full and there might be a loss if they're emptier, but in terms of our planning and thinking about putting children in there as opposed to the external residential, it would be nice to have a comparison in the table. So it needs a kind of heavy footnoting, but I do think it's a missing element of the table.
So,
I mean, I would do it on something like a 90% or something like that. Or
yeah, I mean, we could provide that quite easily, because we know what the cost of running the the units are, and if we assume a level of occupancy, we could give you a unit.
I mean, maybe 9% is not the right number because that'd be half a child or something, but just whatever's realistic. Maybe it's 1 out of the 5 or whatever it is, but...
Just to confirm that we have done that analysis of how we make maximum use of our internal residential, but what our analysis shows is that it wouldn't be cost effective for us to expand our internal residential. The differential between that and the unit cost of external is not so great, actually.
Okay.
And the risks of voids, if you like, is significant. So we keep it to have a minimum amount of flexibility because our in-house provision is provision which we can access quickly, but it's not a cost-effective strategy to expand it.
No, so I don't think I was implying we'd want to extend it. It's just that it's kind of missing from
It's
here,
not in the
and it needs to be
table.
recorded, even if it's a notional figure.
Yeah.
The second thing is, I wondered if there was policy to offer any vacant places in our own residential to the immediately surrounding parts of Hampshire, because I know that sometimes you can't put people in there because of compatibility between different groups and age groups and history of children and relationships and things.
It isn't at the moment because it's so rare for us to be able to offer a place, but that's not to say we couldn't come to some arrangement, but we have to bear in mind our responsibilities, obviously, when we're doing that. Yeah.
Perhaps I'll come and have a chat with somebody just generally about what our policy is around that. That would be really useful. But I mean, clearly this table shows us that's the area we need to look at, is the cost of the external residential. And again, perhaps I'll come in and have a chat about just a few examples of how we're using that and why, because that's where we can make the savings, isn't it? Very useful table, though. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Judith. And I think I've spoken to officers and we would welcome your input, and they're fully on board.
Yes.
For you to come along and have a look at the People 2 report as well, etc. Because in a way, sharing the care of the children in an effective way across the city is my main goal. Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for your report. That's excellent. Well presented, etc. And is that it? Okay. Can I say we've duly noted and bring the meeting to an end? And
So I've got a question I'd like
sure,
to ask.
go ahead.
Please. Is it appropriate? Yes. I mean, I've been on the homelessness working group recently, and it's apparent from some of their figures that there's a number of homeless people who have been in our care, and some of them seem to be under 25. And I just wondered if there's, perhaps again this will be another conversation to have about what is the destination of our children in care population. Are many of them ending up street homeless or rough sleepers, because there are 1 or 2 at least, and what we're doing to respond to the homelessness service when it reports young people under 25 who are on the street, which surely remain our responsibility until then.
I can partly answer that, then I'll let Alison to answer the thing, which is we recognise that fact as well, and we're already putting strategies in place, and we're working up what we can do in the area. I can't give you what the cake looks like right now. I can only tell you the ingredients, and we've recognised we've got to bake a cake and we've got to do something about it. In fact, in my earlier briefing today, some of the areas that you talked about, which I think would be appropriate offline so that we can get your input into it if you want to, but I'll allow Alison to edit. So it's totally recognised, and now we can see the wood for the trees. We're starting to look at all the fringe elements that make up the whole journey through children's services and the transition areas, and also saying what can we do better, a qualitative process all the way through.
Yes, just to say that we've actually been able to invest more recently through a government grant to strengthen our personal advisor service and to reduce the caseloads, and some quite intensive work has been done with the relatively small number, and it is a small number, of very troubled young people who've been through the foyers and other options, and it's broken down, and it's not straightforward this at all, but we do know the position of all of them. And in fact, in the recent, a month or so ago, when we were having snow and really difficult conditions, we were, there were just a handful, and we were making sure that actually, it was 3, I think, that they had somewhere to go. The obligation on us up to the age of 26 is to provide advice. Clearly, we want to make sure that no young care leaver is living on the street. But there was one at least that we just could not get in touch with. So but the staff working really hard.
Thank you. That's reassuring, because it's just that we had a meeting earlier in the week and I observed that there were a number, and I said I would raise it today. Clearly it's, ending up on the street is not a good outcome by anybody's reckoning. And I presume also there may be some other people who are homeless here who weren't our responsibility, and do we then refer them to the authorities where they were looked after? I don't know how that mechanism works.
You're referring to people who've left the care of other authorities?
Yes.
Yes, where we can, and where we can get in touch with another authority to say we're aware of one of your care leavers in Portsmouth, then we will. And I should add that Children's Services will be joining the homelessness working group. I just couldn't make the first meeting. But we absolutely recognise that some of these young people are very, very vulnerable.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay. No, great question, and it's a great opportunity for us to show our true colours, that we're looking for the total solution, and I think that's quite important, because at the end of the day, this is, if you don't try to do the right things all the way through, you end up with an issue anyway, so that's basically what we're trying to do.
What's been discovered through the work that the homelessness working group has done recently is each case is incredibly complicated and difficult, with all sorts of history of chaotic and troubled backgrounds, and so the very intensive work we've done with a number of people who were previously in an encampment in Palmerston Road has paid off with them getting permanent accommodation. And I think the numbers are small, but the piece by piece, actually addressing an individual's needs in a comprehensive way is clearly much more effective than treating people as numbers, really.
That's true. Okay, so any more questions? No, I can draw the meeting to an end. Thank you, everybody, for your time and trouble. Okay, go and enjoy the rest of the day.